Welcome to the Phoenix Preacher Podcast. We have a special podcast that we're doing today based on the child abuse story in the Philippines that we've posted 2 articles about, and we want to make sure that we keep this in front of the public, and we hope, sincerely, that other media outlets will pick this up and speak to it as well. For a little background on the story, last January we wrote about a child abuse scandal that was unfolding at a Christian orphanage in the Philippines. The big story in the American media was about the head of the mission, Tom Randall, and the outrage that his home church felt over his incarceration and the attempts to get him released. They started a Facebook page that the last time I saw it had over 20,000 people advocating for his release. And he proclaimed his innocence and the innocence of the 2 employees that were arrested along with him. Randall was released, but the 2 employees have remained incarcerated. As of today, the person that ran the orphanage for Randall, Toto Luchavez, is charged with 3 counts of lascivious acts against 3 separate female minors. Jake, his son, is accused of 1 count of rape and another count of committing a lascivious act against a minor. And these abuses go back to at least 2005. Now today via Skype, I have with me one of the whistleblowers that broke this story, and I have with her one of the victims who shall remain anonymous. The whistleblower's name is Miriam. Miriam, are you with me?
Yes, I am, sir.
Miriam, we're very happy that you chose to record this with us and to shed some light on the situation so that the whole country can understand what's really going on here. So let's start from the beginning. When did you find out about these abuses?
I found out about them in, is it August? Late August, early September. My friend was teaching at the school that's in partnership with the orphanage, and she was just having dinner with us and then kind of accidentally told me about the girl who's here today and how she had been forced to kiss the administrator, and then some other things about restrictions they had that were unreasonable and some financial things that were fishy about it. And it was kind of an accident, and she kind of poured it all out because she couldn't handle hiding all of it anymore. And so that was the first time, even though we had worked with the orphanage for years and years, and my mom used to be on the board of it, that was the first time we ever heard of any abuse going on.
And what did you do with that information?
I went the next day straight to my father because him and Tom Randall had been best friends for years. And so I figured he would probably want to know so that he could talk to Tom if he needed to. And so that.
And at that point, what happened?
My father suggested we get something more concrete than hearsay, just to be sure before we broach something so serious as that. So Shirley asked the girl who's here today and also another girl who had shared her experience if they would write it down for us. And they did, and she kind of snuck them out of the orphanage and brought them to us. And my mother actually called Tom's wife, Karen, and presented her with the information, and they scanned the letters and sent them. And then during the conversation, Karen started crying and said she couldn't handle it anymore and hung up. And then later, my dad called Tom to follow up. And Tom kind of yelled at him and told him he knows more about this than we think, and he's received dozens of letters from Hazel complaining about, from the girl complaining about this, and that he would take care of it when he came. So my father said, okay, well, you're coming in a few months, so I guess we'll wait. But after that, the teacher who reported it to me, the other whistleblower, she got called into the office with the social worker and the right-hand woman of Toto, and they were going to move her to a secluded housing. And then they were telling her she couldn't talk to anybody about anything that was going on in Sankey and things like that. So we became worried for her safety because she was feeling very threatened by the whole situation and had her move back to her hometown here. After that, we my dad talked to his lawyer about the situation because Tom was being a little bit aggressive and we figured he just couldn't handle it emotionally. So the lawyer suggested that since we were the ones financing the security guards, that maybe we talk to the security agency, and the head of security suggested we change the guards out because the guards were probably corrupt. And so we did, and on the day that we did, Tom got very angry at us. Toto, of course, got angry, called the police and the military, and Tom got very angry and told us to get out of there. He told my dad, get out of there, the military could hurt you, and things like that. And we met with the girls, and they were so thankful to have a guard. One of the reasons that we didn't stop is because when a female guard walked into the girls' dorm, the girls all just stared at her at first, and then they asked why she was there, and I said, oh, she's here for you. And then they said, oh, why? And I said, she's here to protect you and to be here at night. And they all started giggling and were talking to her and asking her where she was and what her name was. And we kept thinking, these are all 18-year-old girls. What 18-year-old girl in her right mind wants a guard sitting in her house watching her all the time? So at that point, we kind of realized that there's definitely some serious stuff going on. And then Tom allowed the guard exchange, and at that time, we believed Tom to be completely innocent. So we told the girls to make sure they told Uncle Tom, thank you for sending the guards, because we knew that if he had received reports before, he would be in trouble. So we thought that if the guards looked like it was his idea, he wouldn't be in as much trouble. But the next day, he called my father and yelled at him and, accused him of overstepping and trespassing and breaking 18 Philippine laws. And now they're actually pushing a case against us for that, which is kind of ridiculous since the girl who took us there, Shirley, lived there. So you can't really trespass when you're with a resident. But after that, we again said, okay, we'll wait until you come because we didn't know what to do. And when he came, he met with my friend and the teacher, and all he did for his investigation was lecture her about how bad the Mock family was. And after that, he came up to me to give me a hug, and I wouldn't give him a hug, and he got mad at me, started yelling at me in the mall, and told me that I had to admit that what I did was wrong. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't, because I would do it again. I would protect those kids again. He said, you can't say that. And I said, well, I can't help it. He said, if you keep saying that and you keep pressing this case, it's not going to affect the institution because I already took care of that. It's going to affect you and your whole family, and your entire family will be deported if you don't apologize for this, because if you can realize you're wrong, I won't press this case. But if you can't realize that you're wrong, then I'm going to have to press this case against you. So I said in a
Miriam, let me make this clear real quickly here.
Yeah.
Tom Randall threatened you with deportation?
Yes, he did.
Okay, go ahead.
So after that, we realized that we had to stop believing that Tom was completely innocent. That was very difficult for our family because 6 months ago, he had asked me if I would marry my husband and officiated my wedding. And 6 months later, he was telling me I was going to be deported. And that was the time when we realized that we had to get this to higher authorities. And so we did. We made a file of the evidences we had and the reports we had and the letters and the contacts and submitted it to the NBA, or the top National Bureau of Investigation in the Philippines. And then after that, it was kind of out of our hands. And we didn't think about it really anymore until January, when they asked us to come in and help them get first-person statements. And after they had first-person statement about what had happened from a kid, they decided to do a rescue. And then that's when the events of January began.
And that's when Toto, Jake, and Tom Randall were all arrested, correct?
Yes, sir.
Tom Randall was released. Jake and Toto remained in jail. We've already documented that they have these standing charges against them. What happened to the kids at that point?
They were actually very surprised because when Tom's there, everything is okay and they're not hurt or abused, and Toto's not mean. So while Tom was there, everything was okay again. So everyone was kind of hoping that it would stay okay. So they were very surprised about the raid and very upset. And they were taken to an NBI detention center. And at that point, we helped them get on the bus because we had rented the bus. So we were supposed to be there to make the contact. But after that, we went home and we didn't stay with them. But in the afternoon, NBI called us to come and help and assist with the kids. And they didn't have supper, and they didn't have toiletries and things like that, and they were in there for almost 3 days. So we went back in to assist with all of that and to encourage them. And it was a difficult thing because we were with them and we weren't really supposed to talk about anything because you're not supposed to convince them of what to say. But at the same time, they had so many questions. So a lot of it was just we continued to update them on what was going on in the media so that they would know, because we wanted them to be aware of what was going on. And then in the end, many of them gave statements, and they all had to get a blue thumb mark if they swore their statement. And it was kind of like a thing. If they had made a statement, they'd come and show their thumb and be like, oh, I did it. And at that time, my husband stayed there for one night with them because the NBI was also working on a much bigger case of a internet sex syndicate in orphanages in the Philippines. So they had no people to watch the kids. So our family ended up being responsible for taking care of them then. And while we were providing for them is when the Facebook page started, and my dad was, made out to be a horrible villain. We were like, all we're doing is trying to feed the kids. After that, they were all sent into DSWD secret housing, which is their typical procedure for abused kids, and then within 2 months they were released.
Miriam, just for our listeners, what is DSWD?
What?
Department of Social Worker.
Department. It's like the
it's like
child welfare.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So they stayed in DSWD housing, which was a very stressful thing for us because they actually told us we would be able to provide them with food and clothing. And then after they took the kids, they wouldn't let us send them anything, not even to a main office to get it to them. And so from that time on, we had no contact with the kids for about 3 weeks until they were released. And then many of them, after being released, were brought back to the Bethel, the church, but including the one who's here. And after she got there and realized it was the same and they were going to control her again, she left.
When you say that they were going to control her, who is they?
The church, but they say the church, they call it Bethel. It's the church there that they were attending. But mainly it was Cherie Ann, the assistant of Toto, and then Tom, from what we can tell, was the one. And then there's one kid who's very like the leader of the pack, and he was doing a lot of things, threatening and bribing to get them to stay. They even facilitated a kidnapping-ish. They lied to DSWD, and someone went and pretended to get a kid out to take him back to his family. But instead of taking him to his family, they took him back to the church. And then he was able to get a message to some contacts who were able to inform DSWD, who threatened the man who had done that, and he got them out. But he ended up running away from a gas station bathroom in the middle of the night down the road to get away. And so that's kind of how a lot of them were scared into staying. Then a lot of them were bribed. One boy was offered a 10,000 peso cash to start and a car, but he said no and to them anymore. So.
Who offered the bribes?
The boy who's in charge of the pack, but he offers them all in the name of Tom.
Okay. Where are these kids now?
They're living in a unit. I don't know. The girl can better answer that question.
They're living in Bethel?
Bethel. It's a church. The church, I guess, rented a housing unit for
a boarding.
Like a boarding house for the kids to stay in. so that it's not an orphanage because they're adults. So then they are adults staying in a boarding house being helped by their church. So it's not an orphanage or an institution or anything, so that it can't be rated or anything like that because it's just adults staying in a boarding house.
Okay. Now, you have with you there one of the victims who chooses to remain anonymous.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Let's have her tell her story of what kind of abuse did you sustain in this orphanage?
Oh, they said that it was just like sexual harassment, as the DSWD had told me. It started because at August 2012, that was the month that happened. In that 1 month, it happened 3 times, where he one day early in the morning he called me in his office, and I don't know the reason why, but he has this good mood like that he doesn't used to when he called me in the office, and he was praising me. Oh, Hazel, you're good in your class. Continue to work on it, like that. Something, he's just saying something to praise me or tell positive things to tell me about, and it drives me crazy. Like, he's not used to this. He's not like this when every time I went to the office. But then that moment he has a good mood. Then after I started to leave his office, it is just in a small one room. He asked me to hug him first, which I think that was okay. Just give a hug, and then after hugging, he kept his arms wrapped around me because he was sitting in his office, a table. Then he asked me to kiss him in the cheeks. I hesitated at first why he's asking for that. Then I said, just like he's pleading to just kiss him. So I did in the cheeks fast. Then later on, and when I said, I'm leaving po, I'm going now, like that, then he asked for the third time, oh, please do kiss me on the lips. And I started, like, my heart beats fast, and why? And I asked him why, and he said, just kiss me right now. That was very early in the morning, so I just woke up and I cannot think straight. So I did what he said for us, and then when I left and as I went to the house, I wiped my my lips because I was so confused why he asked me that. So then I let it go away at that day because I was thinking that maybe there's nothing wrong with it because it was the first time someone asked me to do something like that. Then the second day that happened was a week ago, 1 week after that. My group had a practice there in Prep Squad, and we practiced in the field, but we need an extension for to plug in for the music. And then so I looked for an extension, and all I knew is it is in the office. So I was thinking that I hope there was someone in the office that Kyoto is not there. But when I went to the office, the only one who was there that I could ask for an extension is Kyoto. So I think I had no choice that time. Then I asked him for the extension, and he said that, oh, I had the key to open the room to get the extension, and I said, please may I borrow it because we need an extension for the music in our cheering pep squad. Then he said, yes, you could, but before that, please, kiss me first, like that. And so I did because I really need to go to get the extension. Then that's when he gave me the key to get the extension. So it was really weird. And then when I get out, I was shouting, why? He kept asking me this. And then, so that was the second time. Then another week came, he called me again to his office. And it was really, 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 like, so weird. And when he asked me to go there, so I went, and I was a bit more nervous that time because it was the third time, and I felt like he's going to ask me that again. What should I do? So when I came in, there's like just the same thing. How are you? Like that. And when I started to leave, it goes like the first time. But what's different about this third time is he is now, when I hesitated and said, no, I don't want to. Please, I don't want to. Please, just don't let me do it again. And he's signed a language like, please, like, be quiet. Like, don't say anything. Don't like speak too loud, because his office is just near another principal office, and there was this transparent glass window that sometimes your voice could go through. So the principal there could hear it. That's why he asked me to be quiet and don't say a word like that. So that held me back more. And so he kept insisting to kiss, for me to kiss him. I was afraid that if I do not obey, he might do something. And so I did it. I kissed him, and I feel so bad. It feels so worse in me, because I really don't know what to do. I was afraid. So after that, I left. Then I sometimes at night, like, thinking about it, like, I'm having nightmares. Like, I was thinking that if this go further, something worse is going to happen. Because if I let him make me do it, he will ask another step. Like, it was like a process. So I have someone in my room who is older than me. So I told her about it. And when I told her about it, I asked her, is that okay? Is that a fatherly kiss? But he's not my father, and he's asking for that. And she said, no, that's not okay. That's an abuse. And I was shocked, like, oh no. And so I tried to after a week, tell one of the social worker, because Kyoto is starting noticing me, not smiling at him, not coming to him or giving him a hug. And he started to notice that he asked me, why are you not going to the office anymore? And I thought to myself, why should I go to the office if there's nothing that I should do going there? So I had to tell the social worker, because he's noticing something different about my action, that I was trying to avoid him. So when I told the social worker, I asked him first not to tell Kyoto, because if she told Kyoto without me knowing, Kyoto will try to maybe defend himself with that. So, but she still did, maybe because Kyoto tried her to tell him. So what happened is Kyoto had me called in his office, and he was very mad at me. And he started saying, Hazel, what did you just did? You're ruining my name. Like, you're destroying my name. You're saying things like that. Don't you know you're the only one who's thinking negatively like that? It's a fatherly kiss, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's only you. It's all in your mind like that. And I I cried because I said, no, they said it's not okay. And he said, no, of course that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I also do that to the others. And I said, oh, really? So so when so I was afraid, and because he started saying to, well, I don't care about you anymore. That if you're still like that, I will not care about you anymore. Then I said, what about my studies? And he said, I don't care of your studies. I don't care. I don't care about you like that. So he started, it was like a threat to me because what, he's a director and he's saying that to me, like he doesn't care. He should be the one who was in the first place scared about us because he's a director and he managed things. And then he asked me, who are the others that you're telling him? Who are the other people that you're telling about this and that? Because I might be destroyed. My name, like his name needs to be protected. So then I had no choice. Like I just said, okay, I'll just tell them that it's my fault, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's all in my mind, that you're okay. And that made him happy. So he called the social worker and he said, Jesus is going to tell something about this, that it is not negative. It's just about her, that there's nothing wrong with that. So I told the social worker, I'm sorry for telling you that. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. It was just me. It is all in my mind. I was the one thinking wrong about it. And after that, it came out that he came right, while I came out wrong. But I was the victim. So it really saddened me. And he made me like shut up, like don't talk anymore about it, like keep it all to yourself, like that. So I did for a week and just don't tell anyone about it anymore. But then should I say her name? The other whistleblower who stayed there, she said one day that night, she told me, Hazel, I knew. And I said, what did you know? The other college told her. So I said, yeah, that's true, but I cannot do anything more about it because I felt threatened emotionally about this and that. And then she said, no, we should do something about it. Then one time I had a talk with the other girl, and then I started to tell her also about it. Then later on, after telling it to her, she started to open up that, hey, I also experienced that 3 times in his house, while mine happened in the office, hers happened in the house. And that made me think that no, I cannot just shut up and not speak it to the others, because I realized, well, I wasn't the only one. There was the only one, and she was younger than me. So if I didn't open up, then she wouldn't. So I was really the first one who opened up, telling her that, and she started telling her side also. So that's how it all started. And Ate Shirley was like trying to figure out how she could help me, because when she was there, the other whistleblower, when she was there, she started seeing that something is wrong in Sankey. Whenever new employee goes there, they always start seeing that something is wrong in Sankey, and sometimes they don't want to stay there very long because it's also wrong. And she said that she wants to do something about it, the other whistleblower, and she asked more about what really happened to me. Then I shared it to her, and then that's when, during the camping last year, Ate Miriam had a note in the book and then asked me if I could write a statement of what happened. So I did write all the details that happened on the circumstances that I experienced. So that was the time that it all started after I write to Ati Miriam, and then they did something about it. But during the January, I had no idea that that would happen, because some of the kids thought that I had an idea, and because I have let them know. So, and about Tati Tom saying that he already know and that I was giving him a dozen of letters, that wasn't true. I never had given him a lot of dozens of letters telling him about this situation, because he has a contact with Kia Toto and they talk a lot, and it's even hard to message him in Facebook telling him something, oh, this happened, because I know that it will not be easy for him to believe, because Kia Toto will just start something like maybe change it into something like I was the one being pulled down. So I never write a letter to him. Never write a letter to him like that about telling something that's wrong with us.
Let me just clarify for our listeners that what Tom Randall has said is that he was aware of you and that you had written, I believe it was a dozen different emails or correspondence with him in some way. And
no.
Is that correct?
Tom
he said that, but it's not true that I gave him a dozen of letters.
Okay.
And because if I do email him, Kia Toto will know, and then he will ask me, Hazel, what did you email to Tom? Like, Kia Toto should know what I should email. So it's really it's not that easy to give a letter to Taito, because the letter will always go to the office first before Taito receive it. So I never wrote something like that to him.
I'm glad you clarified that, because one of the things that happens in these kind of cases is that oftentimes the people that make the allegations, that are brave enough to come forward, their stories and their character are assaulted and twisted into them being the ones that have the problem and not the abusers. And it sounds like that's quite the possibility in this situation. Do you personally know of other people, other than yourself and the person that's there with you, that were abused in the same way?
Leah. The other one, the other girl. And also there was this other girl that what she just experienced is Kia Toto just, when she was sitting, and then Kia Toto will pull her t-shirt, the back, put it up. Because also one time when I was feeling sick and I was in his house just waiting for the other staff with him there, and he asked me, Hazel, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm having a headache. And he started to ask me, come here, take your shirt off, like I'm going to massage you. And I said no, because I'm not having a muscle pain, I'm having a headache. So why would he ask me to pull my shirt up and then massage me at my back? So I didn't let him do that to me.
Miriam, your family has been accused of a whole lot of things. Your father, Joe Mock, has been very public about this. He has been absolutely fearless in how he has interacted with the situation. How do you and your family feel today as we sit waiting for this trial to start?
I don't know, we're all my dad uses the word surreal, and I think that just describes it best, because for us, every step of the way, we kept thinking, oh, once they say this, Tom will understand. Once he hears this, then Tom will believe us. Or once he talks to the kids, then Tom will know. Oh, surely now Tom could see. And step by step, Tom hasn't seen the truth, and he's just seemed to work harder to cover it up. And even with him pressing this case against us, it's kind of like, to us, I mean, no offense to the kids who we do love dearly now, but we hadn't had anything to do with Sankey for almost 3 years, really, because Toto didn't want us to. So we just were like, okay, whatever, we'll focus on our ministry. So, and Tom was like, to me, he was like a second father. I mean, he was one of the most important people in my life. And so for us, like, we've always, like, even the media, when they said Tom was being accused of abuse, Tom was never accused of abuse. He was only ever accused of negligence. And for us, it's kind of like it's like a waiting game, but we're kind of just being completely disillusioned and realizing that this man who pretended to be our closest friend for so many years doesn't care at all about our opinion. And which he also told my dad that Toto's opinion was much more than my dad's. And so we're just confused. I mean, we feel betrayed, but then at the same time, if Tom is innocent, then he's feeling that we betrayed him. But the hardest part for us, and I was talking to the girls the other day about it, the hardest part for me is I don't want to find out that Uncle Tom isn't the man I always thought he was. Like, I don't want to hear that he might have done something wrong or that he's intentionally covering up, even though it looks like that. For all of us, it's really a torn thing because we love Uncle Tom and we wouldn't ever want to hurt him or lose his friendship, but standing up for the truth is more important. And now we're going through this case, and it's just a lot of drama that seems unnecessary and a lot of criticism. And we never ever thought it would come to this. We thought Uncle Tom would read the letters and say, okay, Toto needs to be replaced. We never thought any of this would happen, and I think we're all still kind of processing that it did.
What is the outcome that you want to see happen? You're going ideally, what's the outcome that you desire?
Well, part of the outcome is achieved. We wanted Toto not to be able to hurt the kids anymore. And right now, he can't for the time being. So that is good. But ideally, we wanted Tom to see that Toto was no good and defend the kids instead of convincing them to lie. And we wanted him to, we didn't even care at that point if Toto went to jail or we just didn't care if Tom just fired him. Like, it wasn't an issue to us. We weren't really into the whole, like, institutional abuse thing. Now, of course, we would like to see Toto in jail and maybe Jake. But for us, ideally, we would just love for Tom to realize that the truth is that bad stuff happened by Toto's hands, and have him stop defending Toto, because we just think he's going to ruin his entire ministry by defending a pedophile. So ideally, I guess we would see Tom, humbled and no longer, he's just very arrogant, I guess, no longer deceived and no longer fighting on the wrong side. And then, like we said, for the kids not to be hurt anymore, and they're not being hurt anymore. Even if they're still in a controlled situation, but they have more freedom than they did before. Like, they're allowed to go to the mall unsupervised, I guess. And they're not being abused. And that's really what our goal was. So that goal is achieved, and I guess ideally we would love to have Uncle Tom back. And so would the kids.
What are you facing in terms of the criminal case against you? What can possibly happen to you and your father?
It's just a trespassing case, and I think the worst case scenario might be like a couple months in jail, but I think it's just like a fine for trespassing. Actually, our lawyers said that it's more like a harassment than because even the affidavit that they used, Toto and the social workers' affidavits and the charges, what they said, none of it's true. So their whole affidavit is a lie. So it's kind of, and then the whole case is kind of ridiculous because we're listed as partner ministries with Tom. Shirley, who took us there, was a resident of the place, and we paid the security agency, and the guards were changed by the same security agency. And she does that at our place all the time. She'll change out guards all the time because that's what you do to make sure the place doesn't get corrupted. So the whole case is really nothing. It's more of a harassment. But my mom thinks we could face a long time of harassment or possible maybe charges because Tom has so much money to throw around. He's getting a lot done with it. But it's not, I think it's for us more an emotional a harassment than it is an actual like case, because there is no case, so it's like, I don't know, we don't think anything will really come of it.
Okay, real quickly, the charges against Jake are more serious than the charges against Toto. Would anybody like to speak to those?
We actually had no idea of that, so we were just on that day during the NBI when we have to give our statement about my statement and the others. So it was like the first time hearing that, oh, we really didn't know in the first place that he had a case like that, and we don't know who he did that to. So we were shocked that he's one of those, because all we thought it was all along is just Kuya Toto, and then that came up that he's also one of doing something not good.
Yeah, the Jake thing was a surprise to everybody. Yeah. And actually,
because
our family feels like he might have been a victim too. Also. Because the first account of him was when he was only like 13 or 14. So when you have a father who's doing stuff, I think, and also the boys had sworn before they got to NBI not to say anything bad about Toto, and the statements are not complete. So yeah. He could have done the one statement we have been able to see, because it was made prior to the case. Toto is actually the one frequently sodomizing and raping a young boy and threatening his life. But those have not come out yet in the cases. But it was very secret, because none of the girls didn't even know that the boys are really being abused. Like, they saw them get hit and stuff.
Yeah, it's like one time when I was in the office doing my assignment, and one of the boys, there were the two boys in the our conversation room, and I heard there was punch. Two of them got punched and say bad words, foul words, and it was the two that experienced that, getting punched and hearing foul words from Kuya Toto.
Well, so yeah, they knew about that kind of abuse, but none of the girls knew about the actual
alleged sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And we need to be very careful. None of these charges have been adjudicated yet. These are allegations. And we are simply telling the stories from the perspective of the people that were there. And we look forward to seeing what happens in court next month. A lot of people are going to listen to this. What do you have to say? What is the reaction that you want to have from pastors, lay people, other missionaries that listen to this podcast today?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of the feedback we received when my dad was first named as a whistleblower was from missionary kids writing to my sisters, to me, to my dad, saying, oh, when I was a kid in the dorm, my dorm parent abused me and I said something and no one did anything about it. Or my neighbor abused me, but because he was a good missionary, they didn't do anything about it. There are a lot of missionary kids who wrote saying, this happened to me and no one did anything. And then a lot of people would say, oh, I was supporting a kid in an orphanage and then I found out they were being abused and the orphanage didn't do anything. And one guy even said, like 20 years later, his dad still thinks he made up the whole story about being abused. And for us, when the girl here just first came to the house and was discouraged, I told her that what's been happening a bit in the missionary community is people are starting to become more aware of the need to have protection rights in the family. And what we would love to see in churches and mission organizations especially, because most of them don't have a child protection policy, is some kind of way for a kid who's being abused to be able to say something and be believed. One family said they were all abused by their father continually growing up, and they still can't get charges pressed, even though they're in the States now and adults and trying to prove that he did this to them. And we would love to have the missionary community and churches just become more aware of the fact that, like, nobody's perfect. Only Jesus is. So for us to believe that our best friend or even like our husband or our aunt or our uncle or our church mate would never hurt someone is kind of like idolatry, because they very possibly could. They're human and they struggle with sin just like the rest of us. Nobody's perfect. So kind of like an awareness that we have to be watching out for kids, and we have to be putting precautions in to protect them, because it's so easy to hide and the kids are too afraid to tell anyone. And when they do, no one listens. And they need to be able to say when something's happening to them. They need to be taught at a young age to be protected, rather than like one of the number one things we always tell kids: I don't care if you don't like your aunt, you have to give her a hug and a kiss when she comes in the door. It's like the classic thing kids complain about: I have to hug my aunt and uncle when they come. But it's kind of like conditioning right away. If someone close to you wants something physically from you, you have to give them a hug. And how do you prepare them to know when to stop giving what they ask for physically? And how do you learn to trust and love people while at the same time making sure you're protecting the children that you're involved with, and preparing them to be able to speak out if something happens to them, so that they have a voice, and like not like the girls here now, who there was no one who could help them, and they always felt there was no one they could talk to and no one who would believe them. And children shouldn't feel that way. They should know that there are people who they can trust, and leaders of organizations, especially Christian organizations, should be aware of that and not so proud to think that it would never happen, but instead be prepared to deal with it when it does happen.
Very, very well said, Miriam. I thank you so much. I thank the friends that are there with you who have spoke out, who are helping us to get this word out. You all did an excellent job today, and thank you very much for participating in this podcast.